Hello, welcome back to this week's lesson. I'm Brian Vermeer, and as we enter the Christmas season, we're going to be starting a new unit on prophecies of the Messiah. We're going to be looking at some of the prophecies in the Old Testament that relate to the Messiah and see how they were fulfilled in Jesus Christ. So today we're going to be starting with the prophecy from the book of Isaiah in chapter 7, verse 14. This one has a little bit of controversy around it, and I'll explain to it as we get to it. So let's just look and see what it is the prophet Isaiah said. He was talking to King Ahaz of the kingdom of Judah at this time. Ahaz was being surrounded by the Assyrian army. They were threatening to conquer the kingdom of Judah, and Isaiah was trying to let King Ahaz know that it would be okay, that God was going to take care of them. And that's where this prophecy comes into play. So let's just take a look at what it says in Isaiah chapter 7, verse 14. Isaiah told King Ahaz, "Therefore the Lord himself will give you a sign. See, the virgin will conceive, have a son, and name him Emmanuel." Now, this is actually part of a bigger statement that Isaiah makes. Isaiah told King Ahaz that everything would be okay, and Ahaz didn't really believe him. So Isaiah said, well, ask God for a sign. Ask God for something to prove to you that what he says is true. And Isaiah said, well, I'm not going to test God. I'm not going to tell God to give me a sign for it. So Isaiah said, well, if you're not going to ask for one, the Lord himself will give you a sign. And then he mentions this prophecy. The virgin will give birth to a son and will name him Emmanuel. And then he goes on to say that before this child is old enough to know good from bad, the kingdom of Judah would be saved. Now, the controversy around this prophecy is that it seems to have a double meaning. That is, it seems to apply first to Ahaz himself, in that before a young child born at that time would grow to the age where he knows good from bad, God will save the kingdom of Judah, is what Isaiah is telling him. That is, within just the next few years, the kingdom of Judah would be saved, possibly referring to Ahaz himself having a son. And most of the controversy stems around this particular word that in English is translated as virgin. In the original Hebrew, this word is the word alma, which does not strictly mean virgin. It literally just means a young woman of childbearing age. However, a lot of skeptics like to use this passage then to say, well, see, the prophecy doesn't point to the Messiah. It doesn't say the Messiah is going to be born of a virgin. It just says a young woman will have a child. And that's, no big deal. It's talking about something right then. And it may have been talking about something right then. But there is something important to point out about this word alma, which is translated virgin. Every time it's used in the Old Testament, it refers to a virgin. That is, this is saying that a young woman who has never had sexual relations before is going to have a child. So, this could refer in the time of Isaiah to a young woman who has not had a child before is going to have a child. And that before that child grows up, God will save the kingdom of Judah. But how does it refer to the Messiah? Well, again, this word, whenever it's used in the Old Testament, even though it literally just means young woman, whenever it's used, it refers to a virgin. It refers to a young woman who has never had sexual relations. And also it says this is a sign. A young woman conceiving and giving birth in the normal way would not necessarily be a sign from God. That would not be something miraculous. And it's important to note that when this passage was translated into Greek, the first time they translated the Old Testament into Greek, in a Bible called the Septuagint, which is what Jesus quotes when he quotes from the Old Testament, The word Alma in Hebrew is translated into the Greek word Parthenos, which means virgin, literally means virgin. So that seems to be that's what the understanding of the verse was. When they translated it, they used the word virgin. Well, let's see how this applies to Jesus then. We're going to go to the Gospel of Matthew and look in Matthew chapter 1, starting with verses 18 and 19. Let's see what it says there. In verse 18 it says, "The birth of Jesus Christ came about this way. After his mother Mary had been engaged to Joseph, it was discovered before they came together that she was pregnant from the Holy Spirit. So her husband, Joseph, being a righteous man and not wanting to disgrace her publicly, decided to divorce her secretly." So Matthew is describing how the birth of Jesus came. And he is describing a miraculous birth, because he says it was discovered before they came together, before they had sexual relations. It says Mary had been engaged to Joseph. In the King James, they use the word betrothed. And this is something that in today's culture would be kind of between an engagement and a marriage. What it literally means is the contract for their marriage had been signed. So for one of them to go with another person would be considered adultery, but they were not legally married yet, so they could not have sexual relations yet, as far as the law of Moses was concerned. This is the time that they would be engaged. Mary would have been waiting at her home for Joseph to finish preparing the house that they would build in, or that they would live in. And then when Joseph had finished the house, he would go with all of his friends, get Mary, bring her back to the house, and that's where they would have the wedding and the 7-day feast and everything that goes along with a Jewish wedding at that time. But it says before they came together, so before they legally got married, before they had sexual relations, it says she was found to have been pregnant by the Holy Spirit. Now the Gospel of Luke goes into a little more detail on it. It says an angel appeared to Mary and told her this would happen. She said, "How can this be? Because I've never been with a man." And Luke says that the angel told her that the power of the Holy Spirit would come upon her. In other words, she had the egg in her womb. Speaking from a biological point of view here, she had the egg in her womb already. God created a special set of DNA to combine with that egg and make the baby Jesus. The Holy Spirit went into Mary, and God created a special set of DNA to combine with Mary's egg, and that would make her pregnant. So the birth of Jesus was miraculous. It was a miraculous conception. It's not the Immaculate Conception, contrary to popular belief. The Immaculate Conception actually refers to the conception of Mary. Roman Catholics and some other groups believe that Mary was conceived without original sin. This view is not held by most Protestant churches. But Jesus was conceived in a miraculous way without the use of a male. God was the father of Jesus. Now, Joseph knows biology. At least he knows how babies are made. So, putting this in perspective, again, also from the book of Luke, we know that as soon as the angel told Mary about this, that he also told her that her cousin Elizabeth became pregnant. So Mary went to go live with Elizabeth for 6 months. So, looking at this from Joseph's point of view, he's engaged to this woman, Mary. She suddenly gets up and leaves, goes down to Jerusalem, and stays there for 6 months. When she comes back, she's 6 months pregnant. Joseph knows it's not his. So, what is Joseph going to conclude? of course he's going to conclude that Mary had been unfaithful. And in fact, from some other writings from Jewish literature around that time, it seems to be that most of the people thought that Mary had been unfaithful. A legend sprung up that she had been with a Roman soldier named Panthera, and that he was the actual father. But we know from the Bible that that was not the case. That's just the story that went around. But Joseph doesn't know that. Joseph just knows that she's pregnant and the child is not his. So it says, being a righteous man and not wanting to disgrace her publicly. Now Joseph wanted to obey the law. There are several things he could have done, but he felt that divorcing Mary was the right thing to do. And when you were betrothed, again, the contract had already been signed for their marriage, so the only way to get out of it was through a divorce, even though they were not legally married yet. He could have made a big spectacle of it. If she had been caught in adultery, he could have taken her to the town square and had her stoned, put to death. But he decided not to do that. He decided just to divorce her privately and not make a big deal out of it. Well, so what happens, and where does the prophecy from Isaiah fit in here? Let's finish by looking at Matthew chapter 1, verses 20 to 25. Matthew writes, "But after he considered these things, an angel of the Lord appeared to him in a dream, saying, 'Joseph, son of David, don't be afraid to take Mary as your wife, because what has been conceived in her is from the Holy Spirit. She will give birth to a son, and you are to name him Jesus, because he will save his people from their sins.' Now all this took place to fulfill what was spoken by the Lord through the prophet. 'See, the virgin will become pregnant and give birth to a son, and they will name him Emmanuel,' which is translated, 'God is with us.' When Joseph woke up, he did as the Lord's angel had commanded him. He married her, but did not have sexual relations with her until she gave birth to a son, and he named him Jesus." So it says Joseph considered these things, and then an angel appeared to Joseph. And the angel told Joseph, "Don't divorce her. Go ahead and get married to her, because she's telling you the truth. She became pregnant by the Holy Spirit." And it even says that he was told that she would give birth to a son, and they were to name this baby Jesus. In Hebrew, this is the name Yehoshua, which literally means Jehovah or Yahweh saves. It's the same as the Old Testament name Joshua, actually. So the angel confirms what Mary had said. Joseph believes the angel. He gets up and he gets married right that instant. He immediately gets up, gathers his friends, goes to Mary's home, takes her, brings her back to his house. They have the wedding ceremony, and then everything that goes with it. But it says he did not have sexual relations with her until after she gave birth. The consummation of the marriage was actually kind of a part of a wedding ceremony back then. As soon as the bride and groom were married, they were expected to go into the bedroom and consummate the marriage. And this was an important part of the ceremony because the father of the bride afterwards would then collect the sheets that they had done the deed on, which, if the woman truly was a virgin, the sheets would most likely be stained with a little bit of blood. And without going into all the details of how that works, the father would just collect those sheets, so that way the groom could never then come back and claim she wasn't a virgin when I married her. That was actually a part of the wedding ceremony. So they were expected to do that right after the wedding. Well, Mary was already pregnant. Everybody knew that. So Joseph and Mary did not go through that part of the ceremony. but he did actually marry her. And it says, he did not have sexual relations with her until she gave birth to a son. Now, again, there's some division in Christianity about this word until. There are some denominations that believe Mary remained a virgin for her entire life. I personally do not believe that, partly because the Bible does speak of Jesus as having brothers and sisters, but also because of this word until. Whenever you say you didn't do something until, that implies that you did do it afterwards. So, most likely, Mary and Joseph did have normal sexual relations after she gave birth to Jesus. Mary did not most likely remain a virgin her entire life. The Bible speaks of of Jesus having at least 4 half-brothers by Mary and Joseph, and at least 2 sisters. His half-brothers, it specifically says, were named James, Joseph, Judas, and Simeon. And he had at least 2 sisters because the Bible refers to his sisters in the plural. So, Matthew now takes this passage, and he specifically says that this passage fulfills the prophecy in Isaiah. It says that all this took place to fulfill what was spoken by the Lord through the prophet, and then he quotes the passage that we just read. See, the virgin will become pregnant and give birth to a son, and they will name him Emmanuel, which is translated, God is with us. So he actually quotes from Isaiah there. And he, writing this in Greek, also uses the word parthenos for virgin, which literally means virgin. It means a woman who has never had sexual relations. So, Isaiah used the word alma, which can mean a young woman. But when translated into the Greek originally, and when Matthew wrote his gospel, they both used the word parthenos, which literally means virgin. So Mary was a virgin when she conceived Jesus. And when we're talking about the Messiah, would we not expect the Messiah to be conceived in some miraculous way? Would we not expect the Messiah to have something miraculous about his birth? And this is what it is. He did not have a human father. Now, this is actually also important for a couple of other reasons. One of the reasons that this is important is because of a prophecy that Jeremiah made to King Jehoiakim. Jehoiakim was king of Judah when the Babylonians finally conquered Jerusalem. And he told Jehoiakim, who was the descendant from David, that none of your descendants will ever sit on the throne of David. None of your descendants will ever be king. So how could Jesus then be king? Because Joseph, Jesus' father, was descended from King Jehoiakim. And the prophecy came true in that when Nebuchadnezzar did conquer Jerusalem, he had Jehoiakim removed as king and put his brother Zedekiah on the throne. And then later on, he just destroyed the city, took Zedekiah captive, and Israel has not had a king since then. But Joseph, Jesus' legal father, is a descendant of Jehoiakim. So Jesus, therefore, has a legal claim to the throne of David. But none of Jehoiakim's bloodline can sit on the throne. Well, it just so happens that Joseph is not Jesus' biological father. So, Jesus does not have any of Jehoiakim's blood. Jesus is the legal heir to the throne through his father, but he's not a blood heir of King Jehoiakim. But his mother Mary is also a descendant of David. So Jesus is of the bloodline of King David, but not through King Jehoiakim. Therefore, Jesus fulfills the prophecy of being a descendant of David, but also fulfills the prophecy of not being of the bloodline of Jehoiakim, but he also is legally descended from the line of the kings. So Jesus is the legal heir to the throne of David, and when he returns, he will take that throne and he will reign on earth for 1,000 years as king of the earth. And all of this is possible because of the virgin birth. So we see why this virgin birth is important. Another important thing about this prophecy is this name Emmanuel. Emmanuel literally means God with us. And it says that's what this child would be named. Now, Jesus was not legally named Emmanuel, but what is Jesus? Jesus is God come down to earth to be with us. So, Jesus also fulfills that prophecy. He is Emmanuel. He is God with us. Next week, we will be looking at another prophecy from Isaiah in chapter 9. This is another one that you may have heard before, and we'll see how it fits with Jesus. And we'll be looking at several of these as we lead up to Christmas. So, thanks for watching, and I'll see you again next week.